The stars burned white and cold above the fleeing rebel convoy. Luke Skywalker sat in his X-Wing cockpit, hands tight on the controls, sweat under his helmet. A disabled transport drifted ahead of him, sparks trailing from its engines. TIE fighters swarmed like black gnats around it, lining up for the kill. "I've got you, just hold together," Luke muttered. "Rogue leader, shields are gone," a pilot cried over comms. "We can't." The warning tone screamed inside Luke's cockpit. A Star Destroyer dropped out of hyperspace in front of the convoy, a triangle of metal filling half his view. Turbo lasers flashed to life in long green lines. "We're cut off," someone said. It might have been Wedge. It might have been Luke. Everyone was talking at once. Then the universe tore open. Above the battle, the blackness of space twisted into a bright wound. Colors Luke had no name for spun and folded. A ring of white light flared, as if someone had punched a hole straight through reality. Luke felt it in the Force, a sharp, cold shock that made his stomach flip. It felt wrong and loud and alive all at once. "Admiral, new contact," a voice shouted from the rebel flagship. "Unknown energy. It's off the charts." Something fell out of the tear. At first, Luke thought it was a meteor. Fire trailed behind it as it dropped between the Star Destroyer and the crippled transport. But the shape was too clean, too sharp. Wings swept, engines glowing blue. "A small craft," the sensor officer said on open comms. "Design unknown. Shield strong. I repeat, unknown." The craft leveled out instead of spinning. It flew straight toward the transport, nose down, like it had chosen a side. "Who is that?" Luke whispered. Inside the strange ship, Tony Stark squinted at the holographic mess around him. "Okay," he said to no one in particular. Note to self: do not let the wizard and the witch experiment near the big glowing rift in space. Status readout scrolled across his heads-up display. Multiverse coordinates scrambled. Comms channels screaming in a language he half recognized. Basic, but not quite. "Tony." Steve's voice came through, breaking up with static. "Report." "Good news, Cap," Tony said. "We're not dead. Bad news, we're in the wrong space opera." Out the front screen, he saw knife-shaped Star Destroyers, tiny dart fighters, and an old, heavy transport about to be turned into scrap. Green laser bolts chewed through its hull. Tony sighed. And of course there's a battle. Friday, lock weapons. Let's make friends. His craft's cannon spat hard blue light. The nearest TIE fighter exploded in a neat burst. The others broke formation in surprise. Below him, something big and green slammed into a falling walker that had been dropped from a landing bay. Hulk grabbed its front legs and ripped them off in one motion. The walker spun away, alarms wailing, before smashing into a Star Destroyer's shield. Lightning flashed in the darkness. Thor Odinson streaked through open space, cloak streaming behind him, Stormbreaker in hand. He roared as he hurled the axe. It tore through a cluster of TIE fighters, then curved back into his palm in a shower of sparks. "Ha!" Thor shouted to the stars. Tiny metal gnats. On a rebel command deck, officers stared at the screens in shock. Those are not Imperial assets," Admiral Akbar said slowly. "I would remember gods." In the Force, Luke felt them too. Each new presence was a flare, bright, loud, and strange. Not Jedi, not Sith, but powerful. One burned like a storm. One felt like a knot of anger and pain. Another felt sharp and clever, energy wrapped in metal. "Rogue leader," Akbar said. "Whoever they are, they're attacking Imperial craft. Stay on them and cover that transport." "Yes, sir," Luke said. He dove after a TIE, chasing the new ship. eyes flicking between his targeting computer and the wild shapes ahead. The strange craft cut its engines for a second, letting the TIE overshoot. Then it fired. The TIE blew apart. Luke's mouth fell open. "Nice move," he muttered. "Rogue Leader, did you say something?" Wedge asked. "Just watching," Luke replied. Minutes later, with Imperial fighters in chaos and a path open, the Rebel convoy limped toward the safety of hyperspace. The unknown ship broke off and headed for the main Rebel cruiser, engines flaring. "Admiral," a sensor tech said. "They're requesting to dock. Audio only. Language is close enough to basic. Translators can handle it." "Put it through," Akbar ordered. A smooth voice came over the bridge speakers. "Unknown fleet, this is Tony Stark. We seem to be very lost. You're being shot at by fascist triangles. We hate fascists. Can we talk before anyone vaporizes us?" There was a long pause. Leia Organa reached the bridge in time to hear the end of it. She stared at the hollow of the sleek foreign ship, at the walking figure in the external feed, a man in red and gold armor, glowing eyes, hands raised away from his sides in a friendly show. "Let them dock," she said. "Escort them. Blasters ready. If this is a trick, I want it inside a place we control." Minutes later, in the main hangar, Rebel soldiers formed ranks, rifles aimed. Mechanics peeked over crates. Luke stood near the front, lightsaber hanging at his side, breathing slow and steady. The strange ship's ramp lowered. First came the man in armor, his helmet unfolded away from his face, revealing a goatee and dark, quick eyes that scanned everything. Behind him walked a man in blue with a shield on his arm, a woman in black with red hair, a tall blonde man with a hammer, a big, tense guy in simple clothes. Others followed. They stopped at the bottom of the ramp. The man with the shield stepped in front. He lowered the shield a little so they could see his face. "My name is Steve Rogers," he said. "We're called the Avengers. We think we may have just crashed your war." Leia pushed through the soldiers and faced him. Luke watched her take in the god with the hammer, the giant, the metal man, and the quiet woman watching every exit. Leia's eyes were tired but sharp. "This is the rebellion," she said. "We're fighting an empire that has already taken most of the galaxy." Steve's jaw tightened just a little. "We've met an empire before." Leia held his gaze. "Then I'll ask you once, plainly." She nodded at the still smoking stars outside the hangar shield. "Whose side are you on?" Steve sat at the long table and tried not to stare at the ceiling. The briefing room hummed with old machines and new fear. Holoprojectors flickered, showing a rough map of the sector. Rebel officers lined the walls. Mon Mothma sat near one end of the table. Leia took the other. Luke, Han, and Chewbacca stood behind them. Opposite them sat the Avengers. Tony had his armor open at the neck, but the rest stayed on. He tapped a finger against the tabletop, restless. Thor was clearly too big for his chair and looked faintly pleased about it. Natasha watched every doorway and every soldier. Clint slouched a little but missed nothing. Bruce kept his breathing slow, eyes on his hands. Wanda sat close to the wall, shoulders drawn in, eyes down. Doctor Strange stood instead of sitting, cloak draped over one chair, hands folded. A hollow projection of the earlier battle hung over the center. Tony's ship, Thor's lightning, the Hulk's jump. "I'll keep it simple," Steve said. "We come from another universe. We're not from this galaxy." A murmur went around the room. Han snorted softly. "You're sure?" he said. "Because other universe sounds like the sort of thing people say when they're lying about where they parked." Bruce rubbed his forehead. Trust me, I wish I was lying. Steve nodded once. Back home, we protected Earth from threats, a god with an army, a machine that tried to wipe us out, a warlord named Thanos, who wanted to erase half of all life with a set of stones that controlled reality. At the word stones, Luke felt the force twitch again. Mon Mothma leaned forward. You defeated this Thanos? Steve's eyes dropped for a moment. Not at first. We lost. Half of everyone we knew turned to dust. 5 years later, we found a way to fix it, but it cost us people we cared about. Leia studied his face, reading the things he did not say. Luke could see the weight there. Loss, duty, the same he carried. How did you end up here? She asked. Strange stepped forward. There are cracks in reality, multiverse rifts. We were studying one. It became unstable. I tried to contain it. Wonder helped. Something. He glanced toward the ceiling, as if he could still see the tear. Something reached back. We were pulled through. Tony raised a hand. On the bright side, we skipped the part where we slowly drift alone in space and ran straight into you guys. So my day is a little better. Han gave him a flat look. You call that better? You smashed my fuel line when you landed. That's fair, Tony said. We'll fix it. I make good ships. Akbar cleared his throat. You say you fight threats. Will you fight the Empire? Everyone fell silent. Steve looked around the room, at the tiny symbols on rebel uniforms, at the tired faces, at Leia's calm, steady eyes, at Luke, who looked young but already worn. We don't conquer worlds, Steve said. We don't topple governments so we can rule them. But when someone crushes people under their boots and calls it order. He set his shield gently on the table between them. We don't walk away. Luke felt something settle in his chest. Hope, not a wild rush, but a steady glow. Mon Mothma spoke slowly. We have been fighting this empire for many years. They have fleets beyond counting and a weapon that once destroyed an entire world. We have numbers, but not enough. We have courage, but courage does not stop a Star Destroyer's guns. She looked at Thor's hammer, at Tony's armor, at Bruce's hands. With your help, she said, we might turn the tide, or you might draw even greater fire down on the few of us left. Natasha's voice broke in softly. She's saying you don't know us. We don't know you. Either of us could burn the other. Leia nodded. Exactly. Strange lifted his hand. A small golden spark spun between his fingers. It wasn't showy, but everyone felt it. Luke sensed it as a ringing note in the Force, but not the same. Not light, not dark, something sideways. This universe is already fragile, Strange said. We felt fractures when we came through. If we change too much too fast, we may tear the fabric even wider. The Empire is a wound. So is a sudden army of gods and sorcerers. Tony leaned back and groaned softly. Love being called a wound. 10 out of 10. Luke tore his eyes away from the spark and looked at him. You have powers like the Jedi, Luke said to Strange, but you are not Jedi. No, Strange said. Where we come from, we study magic. We make deals with, let's call them powerful beings. We serve as guardians of reality itself. Leia raised an eyebrow. Guardians of reality dropped into the middle of my war by accident. Strange sighed. Yes, not my best day. The holoprojector flickered. A tech rushed in and whispered to Akbar, who frowned. What is it? Leia asked. We intercepted Imperial transmissions during the battle, Akbar said. Lord Vader felt your arrival. The Emperor has been notified. The room seemed to get colder. Luke's hands clenched in his lap. He could feel Vader's distant presence now, sharp, heavy, angry. It had flared when Thor's lightning struck the destroyer. Mon Mothma's voice stayed calm. Then this decision is even more important. If we keep you with us, we make ourselves a greater target. If we turn you away, you may fall into the Emperor's hands. Either way, the galaxy has changed. A soft chime sounded. A small service droid rolled in with a tray of food packets and blue milk, as if someone had remembered halfway through that people still needed to eat. Tony gave the tray a quick glance and handled it like a lifeline. "Okay," he said, plucking one of the grey ration bars and peeling it open. "Important point. Does anyone here know what shawarma is?" Blank looks. Han shrugged. "Sounds like a bad bed at a sabak table." Tony sighed and took a cautious bite. He chewed. His face stayed carefully blank. "Well," Clint asked from down the table. Tony swallowed. "On a scale of 1 to post-alien invasion shawarma stand in New York, this gets a 3. Texture of chalk. Aftertaste of sadness." Thor reached across the table, grabbed a bar, and ate half of it in one bite. "This is excellent," he declared. "Like dried rations from the fields of Vanaheim." "That's not a good thing, big guy," Tony muttered. A few rebels snorted. Even Leia's mouth twitched. For a moment, the room felt less like a war and more like tired people trying to be normal. Then the moment passed. Mon Mothma folded her hands. "Here is my proposal. For now, we treat you as allies under observation. You helped us today. We cannot deny that. In return, we ask for honesty. No secrets that can harm this alliance." Natasha and Clint exchanged a quick look. Steve saw it and gave a small nod. They would handle the hard parts later. "We can accept that," Steve said. "We'll fight with you. We'll try not to break your universe." Strange exhaled through his nose. "I will do my best to keep the fabric of reality intact." "Please do," Leia said. "We're short on galaxies." Han leaned over to Luke and whispered, "You sure about this, kid?" Luke watched Steve's steady eyes, Thor's open grin, Wanda's quiet, worried hands, Bruce's held-back strength. He felt the force swirl around them in new patterns. "No," Luke said softly, "but the galaxy keeps giving us strange friends. So far, that's the only reason we're still alive." Far away, in the cold heart of a star destroyer, Darth Vader stood at the viewports and watched the stars. He did not need a holoscreen to see the battle replay. He could feel it again in the Force. Lightning that was not Force lightning. A mind that thought in sharp lines of calculation inside a metal shell that was not a droid. A raging presence that felt like a storm inside a man. "Strange," he murmured through his mask. An officer behind him shifted nervously. "Lord Vader, should we redirect the fleet?" "The Emperor will decide," Vader said. "Leave us." The officer fled. Vader closed his eyes. The new presences felt interesting. Not Jedi, not Sith, but powerful, potential tools, potential threats. The Emperor would want to test them. In the deepest shadows of Coruscant, far from any window, Emperor Palpatine already smiled. He sat in his throne, eyes half closed, letting the waves of the Force roll through him. The new lights were chaos, bright and wild, but they did not know this galaxy. They did not know him. "Visitors," he said softly. "How delightful." He leaned forward, fingers steepled. "We shall see," he whispered, "whether they are fuel for the fire or new flames to bend." Luke's muscles ached in a good way. He swung his lightsaber again, the blue blade humming through the air. The training remote darted away, firing a low-power bolt. Luke shifted his stance, let the Force guide him, and flicked the bolt aside. It sizzled against the hangar wall. "Better," a calm voice said. Luke turned. Steve Rogers stood a few meters away, shield on his arm, watching. A small group of rebel soldiers trained behind him, copying his moves. Some practiced with shields made from old hull plates. Others ran drills, diving for cover and popping up to aim safely unloaded rifles. You watch people train differently than Han does, Luke said, breathing hard. How does Han watch? Steve asked. He bets on who falls down first. Steve smiled faintly. We had a guy like that back home. He walked closer. Up close, Luke saw the tiny scars on Steve's face, the tired around his eyes, the way he moved, balanced, sure, always ready to move toward danger, not away. Your footing is off when you turn, Steve said. You swing wide. You're trusting the saber and the force to do too much of the work. Your body needs to back it up. Luke frowned and looked down at his boots. Master Yoda says much the same, just with more backward sentences. Steve chuckled. Smart teachers sometimes forget to say it simple. He set his shield down and took a practice staff from a crate. May I? He asked. Luke nodded. Steve showed him the same turn with the staff, slow at first, then faster. Small shift of weight, shoulder loose, wrist firm. Each move flowed into the next, clear and grounded. You're not just swinging a laser sword, Steve said. You're anchoring people's hope. If you fall, they fall. The little things matter. Luke copied the move. It felt better. Thank you, he said. Anytime, Steve replied. You remind me of someone. Used to jump off planes after me with no parachute. Thought the shield would handle everything. He smiled for a second. Then the smile faded, replaced by a quiet sadness. Took him a while to learn balance too. Luke didn't press. He knew the look of old grief. Above them, the ship thrummed. The rebel cruiser felt crowded now. New equipment, new people, new arguments. Tony had set up shop 2 bays over, surrounded by curious mechanics. Strange and Wonder had taken a quieter corner to study the strange patterns of the local stars. Natasha and Clint drifted through the corridors like ghosts, mapping paths, learning habits. Luke could feel it all. The force around them was moving faster now. Han's voice echoed from the next bay. I'm telling you, Stark, if you touch the Falcon's engine core with your toy tools, I will toss you out an airlock. Relax, Solo, Tony called back. I'm upgrading her, not breaking her. You want to outrun those triangles or what? It's the Millennium Falcon. She outruns anything, Han snapped. She just chooses not to when you're looking. Chewbacca growled something complicated. Tony laughed. Luke turned back to Steve. You really think you can help us win this war? Steve picked up his shield again and slid his arm through the straps. He looked out toward the rows of starfighters, toward the stars beyond. I think we can help you survive long enough to win it yourselves, he said. We can't live your lives for you. That never ends well. Luke nodded slowly. That felt right. In a dim meeting room, maps hung in the air. Leia stood with Mon Mothma and Admiral Akbar. Small blue lights marked Imperial patrol routes. Red lights showed rebel cells. A few yellow markers glowed where Tony had suggested high-value attack points. Their hyperdrive tech is primitive next to what Stark describes, Akbar said, tapping one display with a webbed finger. If what he says is true, our ships could be twice as fast with his upgrades. Mon Mothma's face held deep lines. And what would that make us, Admiral? A faster fleet that still has no idea how to rule itself after victory. Leia listened quietly for a moment. We are not talking about ruling yet, she said. We are talking about not being crushed under the Empire's boot in the next year. Mon Mothma sighed. You have flown directly into the Death Star's path, Leia. You know better than anyone how thin our hope is. Leia's hand went to the small blaster at her hip, a habit, a comfort. When the Death Star took Alderaan, we didn't have gods with hammers, she said. We didn't have a sorcerer who can see the shape of reality. We didn't have a man in armor who can turn Imperial guns back on themselves. Now we do. And what do they want? Mon Mothma asked quietly. No one gives that much power for free. Leia thought of Steve's eyes clear and steady, of Thor's loud, open joy, of Tony's sharp jokes hiding something heavy, of Wanda's quiet fear, of Bruce's constant control, of Strange's tense calm. They want to go home, Leia said, but they won't walk past people in chains. Not if they are who they say they are. And if they are not, Mon Mothma pressed. Then we will deal with that when we must, Leia said. Her voice didn't rise, but the air around her seemed to shift. The Empire is a fire that eats worlds. I will use any water I have, even if the bucket has holes. Akbar nodded slowly. I have run the numbers. With their help, our chances improve. Slightly. It is still a battle against a much larger force. Leia looked at the map, at the glowing Imperial symbols, at the tiny rebel ones. Rebellions are not built on odds, Admiral, she said. They're built on people who refuse to stop. Tony stared at the rebel shield generator and felt offended on a personal level. The thing sat in the middle of a cramped maintenance bay. It hummed and clanked. Cables ran from it in all directions, some taped together with patched wiring. This is holding off Star Destroyer fire, Tony said. The mechanic next to him shrugged. Most of the time. Tony rubbed his face. Okay, no, we can do better than most of the time. He snapped his fingers. A small panel in his armor slid open. Tiny drones zipped out and began scanning the generator, shining thin lines of light across it. The mechanic flinched. Hey, what are those? Those aren't Imperial, are they? Relax, Tony said. They're friendly, mostly. Think of them as very smart fireflies that love your shield generator. Fireflies, the mechanic repeated, unconvinced. Dr. Strange watched from a corner, arms folded in his cloak. You're sure this won't change the course of history too much? Strange asked. Tony snorted. Doc, the Empire already built a planet killer. We're past the don't step on butterflies stage. Strange's jaw tightened. There are still lines we should not cross. Giving this galaxy Earth's full technology could ripple in ways we can't predict. New empires, new wars, different tyrants. Tony hummed. So no arc reactors in every fighter. Got it. I'm just making sure their shield doesn't turn off when someone sneezes. One of the drones pinged. Data scrolled through Tony's HUD. He whistled. Well, there's your problem, he said. You've got a feedback loop here. One good burst of fire in the wrong angle, and this whole unit fries itself. The mechanic winced. We noticed. Tony worked for a while, fingers flying over a holographic interface. He added stabilizers, rerouted power, beefed up the cooling lines with pieces from his own armor's backup systems. After a few minutes, the hum of the generator changed, smoothed. The lights along its surface settled into a steady glow. Try it now, Tony said. The mechanic checked his own instruments. His eyes widened. Shield integrity just doubled. And power draw is down by... How did you do that? Tony grinned. Genius. And a healthy fear of giant death rays. He stepped back, letting the mechanic bask in it. Strange moved closer. Every choice like this binds us tighter to this war, Strange said. Yeah, Tony said quietly. I know. He watched the mechanic hurry off to tell his friends, He thought of Earth, of New York, of a tiny shawarma place that smelled of garlic and smoke. He swallowed. We were never good at pretending not to care, he said. Later, in the mess hall, the air smelled faintly of oil and tired people. Rebel pilots hunched over trays. A few played cards. Someone had drawn a crude picture of a stormtrooper getting kicked by a bantha on one wall. Laughter came and went in small bursts. Tony and Clint sat at a corner table, each with a new tray of rations. Steve and Natasha joined them. Han and Chewie sat across from them, eating real food. Han had bullied from the cooks. A bowl of some sort of stew, steam rising. Tony opened another grey bar and sniffed it. On the Tony Stark Galactic Shawarma scale, he said, this one is a 4, slightly less chalk, slightly more whatever this is. Clint took a cautious bite. I give it a 3. Needs hot sauce. Thor arrived, balancing 3 trays, each stacked with ration bars and a cup of blue milk. Friends, he boomed. These small meals are delightful. I have secured extras. Han stared. I didn't know anyone could like those. In Asgard, we ate dried rations on long voyages, Thor said between bites. These have a similar charm. Charm is one word, Tony muttered. Chewie rumbled deep in his chest. Tony glanced at his bowl. What's he having? Tony asked. Don't ask, Han said. Now I have to ask, Tony replied. Han smirked. Welcome to the Outer Rim, Stark. If it doesn't kill you, it's lunch. Steve listened with half an ear, smiling. His eyes kept wandering around the room. Rebels smiled back. Some stared in open awe. A few looked wary. Natasha drank her blue milk and watched too. They're already forming stories about us, she said softly to Steve. You can hear it. He nodded. We can't live up to all of them. We don't have to, she said. We just have to not break the ones that matter. The alarm came 3 days later. Leia was in the command room, reviewing supply lines. The air smelled of too many bodies in too small a ship. Mon Mothma stood beside her, listening to a report from a distant rebel cell. A sharp tone cut through the voices. Tex looked up. One shouted, multiple hyperspace signatures, right on top of us. Imperial? Akbar demanded. Yes, sir. Star destroyers, at least 3. Fighters launching. Leia's heart punched her ribs. Battle stations, she shouted. All hands to battle stations. The calm of the past few days vanished. The ship shuddered as it came about. In the hangar, pilots ran for their X-wings and Y-wings. Mechanics dived for cover. Alarm lights flashed red along every corridor. Get those new shield calibrations online, Akbar barked. Tony, half asleep in his bunk, rolled out and slapped the chest plate of his armor. The pieces flew to him, locking in place. He opened the comm channel. Okay, he said, voice tighter now, all jokes put away. Here we go again. Luke slid into his cockpit and pulled on his helmet. Rogue Squadron, check in, he said. Rogue 2, standing by. Rogue 3, standing by. More voices followed, some familiar, some new. Out the hangar shield, he saw the streaks of Imperial ships dropping into real space. Huge white wedges, flanked by clouds of TIE fighters. Their guns lit up the darkness. In the bay beside him, another figure launched straight out into space with no ship at all. Thor. Lightning crackled around him. Iron Man followed, thrusters flaring. Luke swallowed hard and pushed his stick forward. May the Force be with us, he said. He flew into the storm. The holonet image shook as the secret receiver tried to keep up. In a dark corner of a run-down cantina on a neutral world, a group of smugglers watched the news. The Imperial logo spun slowly. A crisp, cold announcer voice filled the room. And in the outer rim, strange alien attackers were seen aiding known terrorists of the so-called Rebel Alliance. Grainy footage played. Thor, surrounded by void, called lightning down on a Star Destroyer's shields. Hulk tore a walker in half on a rocky moon. Iron Man flashed past the screen in a streak of light, firing on TIE fighters. These unknown entities, the announcer said, are believed to come from beyond known space. The Emperor assures all loyal citizens that these creatures will be contained and turned to the service of order. At the bar, a Twi'lek trader whistled low. "Look at that one," he said, pointing at Hulk. "You think that's some kind of Wookiee experiment?" The older smuggler beside him snorted. "If it is, I'm never crossing a Wookiee again." In another corner, a small child stared at the frozen image of Captain America, shield raised, protecting a group of rebel troopers from a blast. The sound cut for a moment as the receiver glitched. The child's eyes were wide. "Mom," he whispered, "is that a Jedi?" His mother pulled him close. "Don't talk about Jedi," she said. "Eat your stew." But she kept looking at the shield. On the rebel cruiser, there was no time for stew. The main hangar looked like a wounded beast. Scorch marks blackened the walls where TIE blasts had landed before the shields kicked in. A burned-out X-wing lay on its side, nose half gone. Droids buzzed and rolled, dragging wreckage away. Medics moved between lines of wounded on stretchers. Luke walked slowly through it all, helmet under his arm. His muscles were still sore from the battle. His ears still rang with the sound of explosions and screams. He stopped by one stretcher. A pilot he knew, Tessa from Rogue Squadron, lay with her leg wrapped tight. She gave him a weak smile. "Nice flying, Commander," she said. "You and your new friends." Luke glanced back. Through the hangar shield, he could see Thor and Hulk working together, pushing a damaged transport into place so droids could fix its landing gear. Thor laughed at something Hulk grumbled. Iron Man hovered nearby, welding a torn seam in the ship's hull. "They saved a lot of lives," Luke said. "They also put big holes in our ceiling," Tessa joked, pointing at one of the craters above. Luke smiled back, but it faded fast. His gaze slid to the far wall. A row of covered forms lay there, too still, too quiet. Tessa followed his eyes. Her smile slipped. "We knew the Empire would hit harder when we hit back," she said. "This was always coming." Luke nodded. He could still feel Vader's presence from the battle. He remembered the weight of that dark gaze on him as they clashed sabers for a few brief, terrifying seconds before an explosion had thrown them apart. One day, he thought, it will be just us. No Avengers, no Star Destroyer shields or magic storms, just him and me. The thought made his stomach twist. "Commander," a voice called. He turned. Steve walked toward him, shield on his back, face lined with the same mix of victory and loss Luke felt. "How bad?" Steve asked quietly. Luke looked around. "Could have been worse," he said. "Could have been much worse without you." Steve nodded once. His eyes lingered on the covered bodies. "We have a saying back home," he said. "Sometimes a win is just losing slower." "That sounds terrible," Luke said. "It is," Steve admitted, "but it's true in a long war." Luke looked at him. "How do you keep going?" Steve shrugged slightly. "You pick something you can fix today. You help someone get home. You keep one ship flying that would have been scrap. You do that enough times, you get to the big win. Or you die trying, but at least you moved the line." Luke thought about that as they walked toward the command room. Move the line. Not win everything at once. Just push it. The command room felt tighter than usual. Leia stood at the central table, arms folded. Mon Mothma was beside her, face calm, but eyes fierce. Akbar, a few generals, and a few squadron leaders filled the rest of the space. On one side stood the Avengers. Tony, armor scratched from the fight, had his helmet under one arm. Natasha stood near the back, silent. Clint leaned against a wall, arms crossed, eyes moving. Bruce sat in a chair, fingers laced, shoulders hunched. Thor stood tall, looking like he'd be happier back in the fight. Wanda hovered near the door, hands tucked against her sides. Strange stood just behind Leia's shoulder, cloak faintly moving on its own. A hollow replayed a part of the battle. Lightning striking shields, rebel ships limping away, a star destroyer breaking off, listing with one side glowing from internal fires. The Empire lost a destroyer today, Akbar said. That is not nothing. They also marked this fleet, Mon Mothma replied. They will bring more next time. Larger forces, new weapons. They already had new weapons, Tony said. They were testing some kind of focused energy burst. You saw what it did to your outer hulls. I patched 3 holes personally. Leia looked at him. Can you stop it next time? Tony glanced at Strange, then back. We can make it harder for them. But if they point a big enough gun at you, someone is going to get hurt. That's just the math. Mon Mothma shifted her gaze to Steve. Do you understand our concern, Captain Rogers? She asked. You are a symbol to your people. To us right now, you are both a symbol and a magnet. You draw the Empire's eye. Steve met her gaze steadily. We already gave them something to aim at by stepping into that fight, he said. We're not going to pretend we didn't. But whether we're here or not, they won't stop. They didn't build ships like that to leave them parked. Leia's voice was quiet but firm. The question is not whether they hunt us. The question is whether we can survive the hunt long enough to make their empire fall. Strange spoke for the first time. There's another layer, he said. Every time we use our powers at full strength, I feel the stress in this reality. The Force and our magic push against each other. The rift we came through is not stable. If we treat this galaxy like our battlefield, we might tear it apart. Thor frowned. This realm seems whole enough to me. You don't see what I see, Strange replied. His tone stayed even, but his eyes were tight. Tiny cracks, edges, places where the sky feels thin. Luke shivered. He had felt something like that too. A strange echo under the Force, as if another song played behind it. Mon Mothma held up a hand. I am not asking you to leave, she said. Not yet. We need you. The last battle proved that. But I must speak for the Alliance as a whole. Some of our people are afraid of you. Some already call for us to follow your orders, not our own. Leia's jaw clenched. Who? It does not matter who, Mon Mothma said gently. This is what happens when gods walk in a war of mortals. That is no insult. It is a fact. Steve exhaled. We don't want your command, he said. We're guests in your fight. We can advise. We can help. But this is your war. Your galaxy. Mon Mothma looked at Leia. Leia nodded once. Then for now, Mon Mothma said, we continue our arrangement. You stay with this fleet. We coordinate attacks and defenses together. We share what we know. But if you wish to take any major action on your own, you tell us first. No surprises that could put the Alliance at risk. Natasha's eyes narrowed just a hair at the word, surprises. Steve saw it and gave a small nod. He understood her worry, but he also saw no way around it. That's fair, he said. We can work with that. Akbar grunted approval. We also need to discuss the Emperor's reaction. He will not sit idle. He will poke and test, seek weaknesses. He already has, Strange murmured. more to himself than to anyone else. Luke looked at him. "What do you mean?" Strange hesitated, then shook his head. "I'll explain when I'm sure." Leia noticed the look. She filed it away. There were more secrets here, but this was not the time to pull them all out. "For now," she said, "we regroup, repair, train. When the Empire comes again, we will be ready." That night, the ship felt too quiet. In a small cabin near the outer hull, Wanda Maximoff lay on her bunk and stared at the ceiling. The light was off. Only the soft glow from a corridor panel slipped under the door. Her hands itched. In the battle, she had held a whole deck together while TIE blasts hammered it. She had crushed incoming fighters. She had pulled broken ships inward so they would not spin into the void. People had cheered her when she walked past later. "They do not know," she thought. "They do not know what else I can do, what else I have done." She closed her eyes. The room grew colder. A voice, soft and smooth, slid into her mind like smoke. "Child of chaos," it said, "you do not belong in this place." Wanda's breath caught. She sat up, red energy flickering around her fingers. "Who?" she began. The cabin shifted. Shadows stretched. The door, the walls, the bunk, all fell away. Wanda found herself standing in a vast, dark hall. Tall pillars vanished into shadow. At the far end, on a raised throne, a figure sat, an old man in dark robes, hood up, hands pale on the armrests, eyes yellow in a lined face. He smiled. "I am Emperor Palpatine," he said, "ruler of the Galactic Empire, master of the dark side of the Force." Wanda's power flared around her, red light pulsing. "Get out of my head," she said. Palpatine chuckled softly. "Oh, my dear, I am not in your head. You are in mine, for now." She looked around, tried to feel strange, or any of the others. Nothing, only a heavy pressure, like a hand on her chest. "I have felt you since you arrived," Palpatine said. "A wound in the fabric of reality, a gift, a curse." His eyes gleamed, very much like me. "I am nothing like you," Wanda snapped. "Aren't you?" he asked. "You bend the world when you grieve. You warp truth when you fear. Whole lives break around you. You wish to be gentle, so you hide your strength. But strength does not go away because we hide it." His words hit too close. She saw flashes in her mind. Sokovia falling, Vision dying, Westview's hex world. The faces of people she had hurt while trying to protect herself. Palpatine's voice softened, oily and kind. "You tried to fix your pain alone," he said. "No one truly understood. The witch, the monster, the threat." He opened one hand. In it, a small image appeared. Earth, blue and green, turning slowly. "This galaxy is only one among many," he said. "The rift that brought you here can tear your home as well. Your sorcerer friend feels the cracks. He fears them. He would seal them all, even if it traps you between worlds forever." Wanda's heart pounded. Strange is trying to help. "Is he?" Palpatine asked. "Or is he trying to keep his own reality clean, no matter what it costs this one, no matter what it costs you?" He leaned forward. "I can help you," he whispered. "I have studied the dark side of the Force for many years. It is the power of emotion, of fear, of rage. It has much in common with your own magic. Together we could shape the rift, control it, save your world and mine." Wanda stared at him. She wanted to laugh, to scream, to believe. "And what would you want?" she asked. Palpatine smiled wider. "Everything," he said cheerfully. "But we can start with something small. Information. A chance to observe your friends. A tiny window into their plans." Wanda's hand shook. Red light pulsed brighter. "You think you can tempt me," she said. "You think I will trade their safety for mine. You do not know me. On the contrary, he said, I know you very well. That is why I offer this. You will not do it for yourself. You will do it because you are afraid of what you might do without guidance. Better a monster with a leash than a monster loose, The words twisted like knives. For a moment, she saw herself towering over this galaxy, red energy flooding stars, ships breaking like toys, planets cracking, screams. She squeezed her eyes shut. No, she whispered, I will not be your weapon. She pushed. Red energy flared outward, crashing against the black around her. The throne room shook. The pillars cracked. Palpatine's smile faltered for the first time. Interesting, he said. The dark shattered. Wanda gasped and jerked awake in her bunk, heart racing. Her hands left red scorch marks on the metal wall. The corridor outside was quiet. The ship hummed. No one else seemed to know what had just happened. Wanda wrapped her arms around herself. He's real, she thought. He can reach into us, into me. She thought of telling Strange, of telling Steve, of telling Vision, who wasn't here. We're running out of time, she thought. Elsewhere on the ship, another quiet talk went very differently. In a small storage room, lit by one dim strip, Natasha and Clint sat on crates and played cards. A half-empty cup of blue milk sat on a nearby box. Clint had drawn a little 210 on the side with a marker. It's growing on me, Clint said, sipping it, like bad mold. That's not how drinks should work, Natasha replied. They played in silence for a bit. They both knew this was less about the game and more about having an excuse to talk. You feel it too? Clint asked finally. Natasha didn't ask what he meant. Yeah, she said. We're in over our heads. We've been in over our heads since New York, Clint said. Since the robot, since the purple guy with the glove. This is just a new kind of deep. Natasha frowned. I mean with them, she said. With the rebels, with the Emperor, with this force. Clint set his cards down. You think one of us is going to flip? Not on purpose, she said. But people break when they're tired, when they're scared. We've seen it. Hydra, Sokovia, even some of SHIELD. He rubbed his jaw. You want to start contingency plans? I already have, she said, but I want you in on it. He sighed. Nat, if we start planning ways to stop our own people, that's... Being honest, she cut in. If Stark gets too deep into their tech, he could become something the Empire can use. If Strange decides the easiest way to patch the universe is to wipe out a few parts of it, are you going to argue with him in a magic storm? If Wanda breaks... Clint looked down at his hands. He remembered a small house, a family. Wanda staying there frightened and unsure. I'll talk to her, he said. Make sure she knows she's not alone. I know, Natasha said. That's why I'm talking to you. He met her eyes. And if one of them goes too far? She picked up her cards again. Then we do what we always do, she said calmly. We stop the bleeding, quietly, fast, before the whole world sees. He nodded. And if it's one of us? Natasha smiled without humor. Then we hope the other one is paying attention. On an Imperial research station near the galactic core, cold light shone on colder metal. Rows of scientists in grey uniforms stood around a towering device. It looked like the skeleton of some giant beast, ribs of metal curving up around a central sphere. Thick cables ran from it into the walls. The air smelled of ozone and dust. Darth Vader walked slowly along the edge of the platform, cloak trailing, breathing steady through his mask. The scientist flinched as he passed. So this, he said, voice deep and mechanical, is your attempt to grasp the wound in the Force. A nervous officer swallowed. Yes, Lord Vader. as per the Emperor's instructions. We have gathered Kyber crystals from destroyed Jedi temples. We have studied the energy patterns from the recent event. He gestured at the central sphere. Inside it, small threads of light flickered, colors shifting in ways no one in that room had words for. We believe, the officer said, this device could allow us to open and close such rifts at will, perhaps even reach into other realities for resources, weapons, soldiers. Vader stared at the sphere. The presence of the Avengers was like a pressure at the edge of his senses, bright and grating. They were a threat, but they were also proof that there was more beyond this galaxy, more power, more paths. The Emperor will decide how this toy is used, Vader said. Yes, Lord Vader, the officer said quickly. Vader stepped closer to the sphere. For a moment, he thought he saw something in the light, a flash of a shield, a hammer, a familiar mask of gold and red. He reached out with the force. The light shivered. Interesting, he thought. If the Emperor could open and close such doors, he might not be the only one to benefit. For now, Vader said, turning away, you will protect this project with everything you have. If the rebels learn of it, they will come, and so will our visitors. Yes, Lord Vader, the officer repeated, paling. Vader walked out, his mind already turning. He would watch this device. He would watch the Avengers. And when the time came, he would choose how to use both. The time came sooner than anyone wanted. It started with a whisper in the command room, a coded burst from a deep cover spy. Leia read the translated message twice, then a third time. Is it real? She asked. Mon Mothma leaned over her shoulder. The words were simple. Imperial core. Secret project. Energy readings like the rift. Heavy security. If this is a trap, Mon Mothma said, it is well baited. Steve walked in with Strange and Tony just then, as if pulled by the same thread. Leia handed Strange the datapad. He read it, face unreadable, then passed it to Tony. It matches what I've been feeling, Strange said. Something in the deep core is tugging at the rift. This could stabilize it, or tear it open. Tony scanned the numbers. They're feeding power into something big, he said. Kyber crystals, if I'm reading this right. Think. Death Star, but more weird. If they get it right, they could open a hole straight into our world, or any world. And if we destroy it, Leia asked. Strange looked at the holomap of the galaxy. His eyes were tired. We might stop the worst rifts from forming, he said. We might also lose our best chance to make a safe path home. So we have to go, Steve said. Even if it's a trap, we can't let them play with that kind of fire. Leia nodded. We can't hit the core world head on, she said. Our fleet would be wiped out. But we can gather more information, find weak spots, allies, codes. Han groaned. Which means, Leia said, we need to go where the Empire's secrets leak first, to the people who move their cargo and listen at their doors. Tony looked confused. Translation? Han's smile was sharp and tired. We're going to talk to scum and villainy, he said. Nar Shaddaa, smuggler moon, black markets, terrible music, good food. Tony perked up at that last part. You had me at good food. Strange looked like he had a headache. This is going to complicate everything, he said. Welcome to our rebellion, Leia replied. Complicated is baked into the crust. The moon of Nar Shaddaa glowed like a diseased jewel. From orbit, Tony saw towers packed so tight they formed canyons. Neon signs and landing lights blinked all across its surface. Ships of every shape came and went, lines of traffic weaving between spires. It's like if Coruscant and a trash heap had a baby, he said over comms. Han's voice crackled back. You should see the ground level. They came in quiet. The Falcon led, with Han and Chewie at the controls, Leia and Luke behind them. A small rebel shuttle followed. Tony flew outside in armor. Natasha and Clint were on the shuttle. Thor rode in the hold, because Nar Shadda's dockmasters didn't like open gods flying around their airspace. Hulk stayed with the fleet. Even Han agreed that dropping a giant green rage monster in the middle of a crime moon was a bit much. They landed on a mid-level pad that smelled like fuel, fried food, and rain that never reached the ground. Here's the deal, Han said as the ramp lowered. This place doesn't care about causes, just credits. You wave your powers around too much, someone will put a price on your head big enough to make even old friends point a blaster at you. Clint shrugged. So we don't wave. Natasha adjusted her holstered blaster and smiled slightly. We blend. Tony looked down at his armor. Blend, he repeated. Right. Try not to glow, Han said. And let me talk first. You can buy something later. Food, maybe. Tony brightened. Food now, intel later. Got it. Leia gave him a look. Other way around, Stark. He sighed. You're no fun at all. The cantina they walked into was larger than the one on Tatooine, but felt just as busy. Music blared from a stage where a band of odd aliens played strange instruments. Smoke hung in the air. Beings of every kind crowded around tables, shouting, laughing, hissing or chittering. A few hollow screens in corners showed muted holonet clips. One still frame showed Thor swinging his hammer. Someone had thrown a dart at it. The bartender, a heavy-set human with metal implants along his jaw, looked up as they approached. Stark, Han said, nodding toward the bar. This is where you test your little food scale. But later. First, we find my contact. Tony gave the bar a longing look, but followed. Leia kept her hood up. Luke walked beside her, hand close to his saber, but not touching it. Nat and Clint drifted apart slightly, watching entrances and exits. Tony took off his helmet, tucking it under his arm so he at least looked human. Thor stayed back near the door for now, trying not to bump anything important. Han threaded through the crowd, greeting a few people, ignoring others. At a side table, a Rhodian with scarred antennae leaned back, boots up, a data chip in his fingers. Rallo, Han called. I thought the Hutts had eaten you by now. Rallo snorted. Solo, you're the one coming back from the dead these days. His eyes flicked to the group behind Han. You brought tourists. High-paying tourists, Han said, with specific questions. Leia stepped forward, pulling her hood back just enough for Rallo to see her face. Rallo swallowed. Your Highness, he said, suddenly formal. I did not know you were... This is a bad place for you. Then answer fast so we can leave, Leia said. We're looking for information about a new Imperial project near the core. Something to do with odd energy, Kyber, strange readings. Rallo rolled the data chip between his fingers. Information like that costs a lot, he said. In credits and in risk. Tony pulled a small device from a pocket. This can turn the shield on your ship from maybe stops one blaster to laughs at a patrol cruiser, he said. You give us something real, it's yours. Rallo's eyes widened. You can do that. Tony shrugged. If your ship isn't complete junk, and if you don't shoot us with it later. Rallo laughed nervously. Who, me? Shoot you? Never. Leia watched him. Watched the way his eyes flicked to the exits, to the shadows. You already know something, she said, or you wouldn't be this nervous. Rallo hesitated, then nodded. Word is, he said, voice low. The Empire's moving a lot of crystal and equipment to a station near the core. More security than a moth's birthday party. They're keeping it quiet, but their ships run through certain jump points more often now. We can see patterns if we look. He slid the chip across the table. Trade routes, schedules, that's all I've got. I don't ask more. People who ask about the core vanish. Leia picked up the chip. This is enough, she said, for a start. Tony set the small device down in its place. Rallo grabbed it quickly, like it might vanish, then hid it under his jacket. As they turned to go, the bartender called out, "You going to order or just use my place for business?" he growled. Tony raised a hand. Right. 6 of whatever passes for shawarma here." The bartender frowned. "Sure. What?" "Wrap, meat, bread, sauce," Tony said, making vague shapes with his hands. "Spice, heat, not dry. Tastes like hope after a bad day." The bartender stared at him, then grunted. "I got something close. Maybe." Minutes later, they sat around a small table with wrapped street food. Clint took the first bite and blinked. "Okay," he said after a second chew. "That's actually good." Tony bit into his. Sauce dripped onto his glove. He closed his eyes. "On the galactic shawarma scale," he said, "this is a solid 8, maybe 9. Nah Shada, you beautiful trash fire." Thor took 3 wraps and stuffed them into his mouth in quick bites. "Glorious," he declared. "This moon is worthy." Leia chewed hers carefully. It was spicy, smoky, messy. For a moment, it pushed away the war. Luke smiled faintly. "Ben never told me about this part of the Force," he said. Natasha dabbed sauce from her lip. "There's no prophecy that says you can't fight empires and still eat," she said. They laughed softly. Then the door blew open. The blast threw hot air and shards of metal across the cantina. Screams filled the room. Smoke poured in. Through it walked a tall figure in green and grey armour, helmet shaped like a T. A cape hung from one shoulder. A blaster rested easy in his hand, pointed down but ready. Beside him moved others. A Trandoshan with heavy claws and a wide grin. A thin droid on spindly legs, weapons built into its arms. A few armoured humans with various patches and gear. A small hollow above the bar flickered to life, showing a flashing symbol and a bounty notice. The image was grainy, but clear enough. Thor's hammer, Hulk's silhouette, Iron Man's glowing eyes, a shield. "By order of the Imperial Security Bureau," a cold voice said from the hollow. "A reward is offered for information leading to the capture of the unknown invaders. Alive is preferred. Dead is acceptable." The armoured man, Boba Fett, raised his blaster. In the corner, someone whispered, "Storm gods." Clint sighed and set his half-eaten wrap down. "We can't go anywhere nice," he muttered. Natasha's eyes flicked to exits, to cover, to civilians. "Try not to level the moon," she said softly. Then she moved. The first shots turned tables into splinters. Boba fired at Tony. Tony's suit snapped shut over his face, helmet clicking into place a split second before the bolt hit. The blast flared against his chest, pushing him back. "My food," Tony shouted. "You shot my food." He flared his thrusters, lifting off the floor, and fired a repulsor blast. Boba rolled aside faster than a normal human, jetpack flaring for a brief boost. The blast hit the wall, carving a glowing scar. The Trandoshan hunter leaped toward Thor, claws out. Thor grinned wide. "A worthy foe," he said, and met him head on. They crashed through a table, sending plates flying. Thor took a rake of claws across his arm and laughed. He swung his hammer in a tight arc, catching the hunter in the chest and sending him sailing into a support pillar. On the other side of the room, the droid, IG-88, locked onto Luke. It fired a rapid stream of bolts. Luke's lightsaber snapped up, blue blade batting shots away. Some went into the ceiling. One hit the hollow screen, turning Palpatine's face into static. "Clint!" Luke shouted. "Got it," Clint called back. He had already vaulted onto the bar, bow in hand. He fired a grappling arrow into a ceiling beam and swung, loosing a trick arrow mid-air. It stuck to IG-88's chest and exploded into a net of crackling energy. The droid spasmed, firing shots wild. Natasha slid under a table, kicked the legs out from a bounty hunter aiming at Leia, and swept his feet. She grabbed his blaster in one smooth motion and shot him in the knee. "Stay down," she said. Han drew and fired, taking out another hunter's weapon hand. Chewie roared and flipped a heavy table to form a makeshift barricade for fleeing civilians. "Everyone out," Leia shouted to the crowd. "Move." Panic broke. Patrons rushed for side doors and halls. Some dove behind the bar. A few stayed to watch, too shocked or stupid to leave. Boba Fett's jetpack flared again. He shot upward, landing on a balcony ring. From there, he fired a whipcord that wrapped around one of Tony's boots. Tony jerked mid-air. "Hey," he snapped. "This is not a rodeo." Boba hit a control on his wrist. The cord sent a pulsing charge through Tony's armor. Systems flickered. Tony dropped, crashing into a table. "Ow," he said. "Okay, these guys do their homework." Leia ducked a bolt and fired back, grazing a hunter's shoulder. She moved with hard-earned calm. This was not the worst cantina fight she had seen. Luke jumped onto the bar, saber a blue blur as he deflected bolts. The Force hummed around him. He could feel each shot before it came. But these opponents were not stormtroopers. They adjusted fast, testing angles, using cover. "Luke," Leia called, "we can't stay pinned here." "I know," he shouted. A rocket streaked toward their table, from Boba, launcher on his back. At the last second, a golden disc flashed into its path. Steve's shield took the blast. The shockwave shoved him backward, boot heels sliding across the floor, but he stayed on his feet. "Everybody okay?" he called. "Define okay," Tony replied from the ground. Steve lifted his shield. The front was blackened, but intact. He met Boba's visor from across the room. They both knew, in that instant, that this was not going to be a friendly talk. "Clint," Steve called. "Roof. Nat, flank. Stark, get up." Tony groaned and rolled to his feet. "Yes, Mom." Outside, the fight spilled onto the walkways. Nar Shaddaa's mid-level streets were narrow and crowded, with no clear line between street and balcony and roof. Platforms jutted from buildings at random levels. Bridges connected towers. Speeders roared past, horns blaring as fights broke into their path. Natasha and Clint took the high ground, running along a catwalk with no rails. Clint fired arrows that turned into smoke screens, flashbangs, and sticky goop. One arrow sealed a doorway, keeping more hunters from joining. Another stuck a hunter's feet to the ground. Tony flew above the street level now, keeping his distance from Boba's whipcord. He had adjusted his suit's shields for whatever frequency the cord had used. His repulsor blast followed Boba across balconies. Boba used his jetpack smartly, never staying in one place. He fired rockets at support beams, forcing Tony to break off to catch falling debris before it crushed bystanders. He used the crowd as cover, sometimes dropping into it, vanishing, then popping up somewhere else. Thor chased the Trandoshan along a lower walkway. They smashed through stalls and vendor, carts. An angry shopkeeper shouted as a crate of fruit went flying. "This chase is costing me credits," Han yelled, running with Leia and Chewie behind Thor. Chewie barked something. Yes, I know it's also going to cost me repairs, thanks, Han said. Luke and Leia moved together, watching each other's backs. Luke deflected shots and cut down small flying droids. Leia returned fire with careful, controlled bursts, never losing track of the civilians around them. A child tripped and fell in the path of a rolling barrel. Luke saw it and jumped, grabbing the child and pulling him clear as the barrel exploded against a wall. "Get to cover," he shouted, handing the child to a shaken parent. In the background, Nar Shadda's normal chaos went on. People ran. Others watched from windows. A few bet on the outcome. High above, Strange stood on a narrow ledge, cloak flapping in the wind. He didn't fight in the same way. He watched the pattern, the way the fight pulled attention, the way fear and excitement spread through the crowds. He felt the force here too, a weak, sickly pulse under the noise. Something else brushed his mind. "You like to look down, do you not?" a small, amused voice said. Strange turned his head. No one stood beside him, yet in his mind's eye, he saw a small green figure with large ears and kind, tired eyes. "Yoda," he said. "Yes," the voice replied. "Far away am I, but close too, through the Force." Strange swallowed. "You've been watching," he said. "Long have I watched," Yoda said. "Long have I felt your steps. Not of this galaxy you are. Heavy your presence rests on the current." "You're going to tell me to leave," Strange said. "No," Yoda said, and Strange could hear the faint smile in it. "Tell you to think I will, to look not only at now, but later. Powerful, your friends are. Loud, as well. Move too hard, and break the water you will." Strange watched Tony slam into a wall and bounce off, armor sparking. He watched Wanda, who had joined the others, catch falling debris with red energy and set it aside like it weighed nothing. "The Emperor has a device," Strange said. "He's trying to control the rift. If we do nothing, he might succeed. If we attack, we might tear it wider. There's no good choice." "Always choices there are," Yoda said. "Only hard, they may be. Trust the light. Accept that not all things you can fix. Guard the door, perhaps. Not own it." Strange closed his eyes for a moment. Wind tugged at him. The city roared below. "If we help too much, we break their story," he said. "If we do too little, we break their world." "Hard path," Yoda agreed. "But chosen it you have, by walking it." The presence faded, leaving only the rough stone under Strange's boots and the sound of battle. He opened a portal with a sharp gesture and stepped through, appearing on a lower walkway just in time to raise a golden shield. A spray of blaster fire that would have cut down a group of fleeing civilians hit his shield and scattered harmlessly. "Go," he shouted. "Left." They ran. He held the shield until the last of them passed, then dropped it and moved on, cloak snapping behind him. The fight ended not because one side crushed the other, but because both sides had gotten what they came for. Boba Fett, breathing hard under his helmet, checked his systems. Armor dented, jetpack low on fuel, 2 cracked ribs, no captures, no bodies to prove a kill. He didn't like that, but he had recordings. Images of the invaders in action, readings of their energy outputs, data on how they moved, fought, protected. The Empire would pay well for that. He fired his jetpack, shot upward into the swirling traffic, and vanished into the sky. The remaining hunters, seeing their leader go, cut their losses. Some fled into side alleys. Others limped away. A few lay groaning on the ground, tied with Clint's trick lines or stunned by Natasha's shots. Thor stood in the middle of a smashed stall, breathing deep, cape torn, hammer still in his hand. Fruit pulp and broken wood covered him. I claim this moon in the name of, he began. Don't, Leia said sharply. Just, no. He grinned sheepishly. As you wish. Tony hovered above them, armor smoking. That was not our quietest visit, he said. Han glared up at him. You think? Luke looked around. Civilians were already picking up pieces. A few looked at the Avengers with fear now, not awe. Others looked with something like respect, but everyone looked. We need to go, Luke said, before more show up. Natasha nodded. We got what we came for. Rallo's chip, plus whatever Stark pulled from their gear. Tony patted a compartment on his arm. On it, I scanned their toys, gravity nets, ion weapons. I can build counters. Later, preferably when no one is trying to turn me into scrap. Clint picked up his dropped wrap from where it had landed on a crate. Miraculously, it was only a little squashed. He took a bite. Still an 8, he said with his mouth full. Nar Shaddaa, come for the crime, stay for the food. Leia shook her head but smiled for a second. Then she saw the small blast scorch high on a tower wall. The Imperial bounty symbol burned there, still faintly glowing. The Empire knows, she thought. They know our new friends. They will come harder now. She tucked that fear away behind her usual steel. There would be time to be afraid later. Back on the Rebel cruiser, in a more secure room, Tony spread the stolen data across a holotable. Lines of code and energy readings spun in the air. A model of the Imperial Rift device rotated slowly. Strange stood on one side, Luke and Leia on the other. Han leaned against the wall, arms crossed. Steve watched from near the door. It's worse than we thought, Tony said. He pointed at one section of the device. They're using kyber crystals to focus whatever energy leaks out of the rift. If they line it up just right, they can punch a new hole into anywhere. Our world. Another one. Or they can use it like a giant gun. Leia's brow furrowed. Explain. Imagine the Death Star, Tony said. But instead of one laser, it can open a door inside your star and let the core leak out. Or it can dump raw, reality energy into a planet's atmosphere. It won't just blow things up. It'll twist them. Luke swallowed. He could almost feel it, like a scream in the Force that hadn't happened yet. Can they do it now? He asked. Tony shook his head. Not yet. Their math is messy. That's good. If they try it now, they'll probably blow themselves up. But they'll keep working. Strange rubbed his temples. If they succeed, they could tear a hole that never closes, he said. A wound between universes that just keeps bleeding. Leia looked at Steve. Can we destroy it? She asked. Steve's jaw set. We've brought down weapons before, he said. But this isn't a simple bomb run. We hit it wrong. We might trigger it instead of stopping it. Strange nodded. We'll have to be careful. Channel the energy away. Seal it and break it at the same time. Han threw up his hands. Great. So our plan is attack the most secure Imperial station in the galaxy and perform fancy magic surgery on something that wants to eat reality. Would it kill the universe to give us one simple job? Yes, Tony said. That's the point. It kills universes. Han scowled. I walked into that one. Luke stared at the hologram of the device. He felt a pull. The same pull he had felt when he first held a lightsaber. When he first heard the Death Star's name. When he first faced Vader. This is the center now, he said quietly. Not just of this war, of everything. Leia put a hand on his arm. Then we will move the line there, she said. Steve stepped closer to the holo. The light played across his shield. We'll need a plan, he said. We'll need the whole alliance and all of us. No half measures. no going in blind. Strange looked at Wanda, who stood in the doorway, listening. Her face was pale. Her eyes flicked away when he met them. He knew she had not slept well since Nar Shaddaa. He had sensed something in her aura, a shadow, but not its source. Not yet. "We have time," he said aloud. He wasn't sure that was true, but he needed it to be. "We don't waste it," Steve said. Outside the viewport, stars drifted by. Somewhere in the deep core, a device hummed and grew stronger, watched by a smiling old man and a silent black mask. And across 100 worlds, people told stories of new gods in the sky, wondering if they were the galaxy's salvation or its next great threat. Weeks passed, but the war did not slow down. Steve Rogers stood on the dusty training ground of a hidden rebel base and watched a line of soldiers move in sync. They held shields made from cut-up hull plates. They wore simple armor. Sweat rolled down their faces. "Again," Steve called. "Shields high. Step forward on 3. They lifted their shields together. A squad of other rebels opposite them fired low-powered training bolts. The makeshift shields flared as the shots hit. A few rebels flinched. One dropped his grip. Steve walked over, picked up the shield, and handed it back. "You don't hold it for yourself," he said. "You hold it for the person next to you. Remember that when you're tired." The young man nodded, breathing hard. "Yes, sir." Steve gave a faint smile. "It's Steve here, not sir. We've got enough titles already." He stepped back as they reset. His eyes wandered across the base. Near the hangar, Tony Stark stood with a group of mechanics around an X-Wing. The fighter's engines had strange new panels on them. Tony pointed at a screen and showed the pilot how to reroute power when the shields were hit. "This'll give you 5 more seconds before everything melts," Tony said. 5 seconds is a lifetime in a dogfight. Use it." The pilot nodded eagerly. "Thank you. I'll buy you a drink if I make it back." "I'll hold you to that," Tony replied. At another corner, Thor helped 2 techs move a giant power cable. He lifted it with one hand and laughed when the smaller being struggled with the other end. "You must eat more," Thor told them. "Food gives strength. Where is your cook? We shall discuss meat." Bruce and a small group of medics worked in the field clinic. He showed them how to patch wounds faster, which herbs from local worlds helped with shock, how to calm someone who had seen too much. Hulk only came out when needed now, and even then, Bruce tried to aim him away from the most fragile things. Natasha and Clint vanished for hours, then came back with maps, codes, and small smiles that never reached their eyes. They trained rebel scouts in how to move without being seen, how to blend in, how to survive behind enemy lines. Wanda spent long hours in quiet rooms, learning the feel of the force around her magic. Strange helped her. Sometimes Luke joined, eyes closed, lightsaber beside him as they meditated together. Luke had grown sharper. His saber work was cleaner, his sense of the force more sure. He still doubted himself, but he did not let it stop him as often. Steve watched all of it and felt something strange in his chest. This is how it should feel, he thought. Not gods above people, just people sharing what they know. A whistle blew. The training drill paused. A small droid rolled onto the field with a tray of food packets and 2 steaming pots. Tony walked over, wiping grease off his hands. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said loudly, "today's exciting news. I have taught your cooks how to make something almost like a taco." A few soldiers looked confused. Others leaned forward. "It's bread," Tony explained, "with meat and sauce and some local green thing that probably won't kill you. We'll call it Rebel Wrap." Clint took one, bit into it, and nodded. 7 out of 10, he said. Needs more spice. Steve took one too. It was messy and warm. Simple. Good. On the galactic shawarma scale, Tony asked. Steve chewed, thought about it, then shrugged. I still don't know what shawarma is, he said, but this is better than those chalk bars. Nearby, 2 young rebels laughed. For a moment, the base felt less like a hiding place and more like a camp, a community, a home that had not yet had time to grow old. Then the comm towers hummed, and the moment ended. Stephen Strange stared at the swirling lines of light above the table and felt his head pound. They were in a small strategy room deep in the Rebel cruiser. Holographic paths of ships, energy readings, and odd rift patterns filled the air. The Imperial core device glowed at the center of the model, like a small artificial star. Tony paced along one side of the room. Leia and Mon Mothma stood quietly near the other. Steve leaned against the wall. Wanda sat in a chair in the corner, knees drawn up, eyes fixed on the lights. "You're sure?" Leia asked. Strange rubbed his eyes. "I've checked 3 times, he said. "The rift is getting worse. The Emperor's device is drawing from it. If he succeeds, this galaxy may not survive the strain. If we walk away, our universe is still at risk. The cracks are spreading." "So we destroy it," Steve said. "We fought weapons like this before." Tony stopped pacing. "It's not that simple," he said. "If we blow it up wrong, we might trigger the very thing we're trying to stop. Think of it like overloading a reactor that's already on the edge. You don't just hit it with a hammer." Thor frowned. "But I like hammers." "Sometimes we use scalpels," Strange said, "or thread, or whatever we can." Wanda's voice was soft. "He spoke to me," she said. The room went still. "Who?" Steve asked. Wanda swallowed. "The Emperor, Palpatine, in a vision. Maybe more than a vision. He pulled me into his mind, offered to teach me, to help control the rift, for a price." Strange's jaw tightened. "When?" "A few nights after the first big battle," she said. "I pushed him out, but he knows my power. He knows I'm afraid of it." Leia's eyes narrowed. "And he will use that fear," she said. "That is what men like him do." "Why didn't you tell us?" Steve asked gently. Wanda looked at her hands. "Because I didn't want you to look at me the way he does," she said, "as a bomb that might go off." Clint had slipped into the room at some point and now leaned in the doorway. "Kid," he said, "we already know you're a bomb. We're still here." Wanda let out a short, shaky laugh. Strange stepped closer. "We face this together," he said. "If the Emperor tries to use you again, we'll be ready, and we'll turn his own arrogance against him." Tony nodded. "And we'll take extra care with the device," he said. "We go in with a plan, not just Hulk smash." From the doorway behind them, Bruce cleared his throat. "I heard that," he said. Tony glanced at him. "You were built to smash, big guy. That's not an insult." Bruce pushed his glasses up. "I know. I just prefer to do it to the right things." Mon Mothma spoke quietly. "If we do nothing, the Emperor gains a weapon beyond our worst fears," she said. "If we strike, we risk tearing our galaxy apart. If we send you away, we are left blind to this threat. If we keep you, we draw more fire." "Sounds like every choice we've had lately," Han muttered. He must have arrived during the last part of the talk. He leaned against the back wall next to Chewbacca. Steve straightened. "We can't run from this," he said. "Not back to our world, not here. That thing threatens both. So we go in. We hit it smart. We protect as many as we can. We do not take control of it. We do not sit on that throne." He looked at Leia, then at Mon Mothma. "This is your galaxy," he said. "We're not here to become its kings." Leia's gaze softened. "Good," she said. "We're not good at being ruled." Strange looked back at the glowing model. "I have seen futures," he said. "In some, we destroy the device but break the rift so badly we cannot fix it. In others, we control it, and your emperor never falls. He just wears a different mask. Neither path feels right." "Is there one where we win and everything is fine?" Han asked. Strange gave a short, humorless smile. "No," he said. "There are paths where we win some things and lose others, where the empire is hurt but not dead, where the rift is sealed but not gone." He looked at Wanda. "In the ones that feel best, you are at the center." Wanda stiffened. "I don't want to be at the center," she said. "Neither did I," Luke said softly from the doorway. He had been listening, quiet as a shadow. "But here we are." Strange nodded slowly. "We aim for that path," he said. "Not perfect, but better than the others." Tony took a deep breath. "Okay," he said. "So here's the plan. Multi-front. We hit the station with a small strike team and the rebel fleet as distraction. Luke, Steve, Nat, Clint, and a group of rebel commandos go for the control center and shield generators. Thor, Hulk, and some heavy hitters create chaos on the outer platforms. Han, Chewie, and the pilots hit the defense fleet with the upgrades we gave them. And you two," he nodded at Strange and Wanda, "go for the core. You shape the energy while we keep the Emperor off your back." Leia folded her arms. "You make it sound simple," she said. Tony shrugged. "Simple doesn't mean easy." Bruce looked at Steve. "If Hulk loses control near that thing, he could make things worse," he said. Steve shook his head. "If Hulk doesn't stand between that power and our people, things get worse anyway," he replied. "We trust you, Bruce. We trust him." Bruce closed his eyes for a second. When he opened them, there was a hint of green in them. "Okay," he said. "Then we make it count." The Imperial Rift Station hung above the deep core like a spider over a fire. From the cockpit of an A-Wing, Han Solo whistled low. The station's main ring spun slowly around a blazing central sphere. Dozens of Star Destroyers floated nearby, guns aimed outward. Smaller defense platforms dotted the space around them like teeth. "Remind me why we're doing this again," Han muttered. Chewbacca growled from the co-pilot seat. "Right," Han said. "Because if we don't, the universe breaks. No pressure." The rebel fleet dropped out of hyperspace around them. New shields glowed brighter on their hulls, Tony's handiwork. Smaller ships darted forward. X-Wings, Y-Wings, A-Wings. Their pilots exchanged quick, tense jokes over comms. "This is General Solo," Han said. "Stay tight. Stick to your wingmates. And if any of you scratch the Falcon, I'm taking it out of your pay." Chewie roared something that sounded like a laugh. On the edge of the fleet, a figure in red and gold armor hovered, thrusters glowing. Tony checked his weapons one more time. "Stark here," he said. "All systems green. Remember, we're here to distract, not show off." "Okay, we're a little here to show off." Steve's voice came over another channel. "Stark," Tony sighed. "Fine. No showing off. Much." Thor floated beside him, holding Stormbreaker tightly. Lightning danced along the axe's edge. "I am ready," Thor said, eyes on the station. "This beast of metal will feel the storm. Just don't hit the part Strange needs," Tony said. Thor grinned. "Which part is that?" "The part that isn't shooting at us," Tony replied. "You'll figure it out." Luke's voice cut through the chatter, calm and strong. "All wings, lock S-foils in attack position," he said. "We draw their fire. The strike team gets in. We all come home. Steve stood in the cockpit of a stolen Imperial shuttle that drifted near the back of the rebel formation, pretending to be a supply ship. He wore a stolen grey officer uniform over his suit. His shield was hidden behind a panel. Natasha sat at the controls. Clint and a small group of rebel commandos waited in the back. Luke stood near the door, in a simple cloak, hood down. "Everyone ready?" Steve asked. Natasha smirked. "This is the part where we pretend to be boring," she said. "Try not to smile too much." The shuttle moved ahead, slipping into a gap in the Imperial formation, broadcasting stolen codes Tony had pried from Rallo's chip. For a few tense minutes, no one shot at them. Then the sky lit up. Rebel ships and Star Destroyers opened fire at the same time. Green and red bolts crossed the void. Tony and the other fighters dove and rolled. Thor flung himself into the middle of a swarm of ties, hammer spinning. Hulk crouched in a drop pod, waiting for his turn. On the bridge of the Central Star Destroyer, Darth Vader watched coldly. "They are more bold than I expected," he said. An officer swallowed. "Shall we deploy the station's weapon, Lord Vader?" "Not yet," Vader said. "We do not risk the Emperor's toy for the sake of one fleet." He turned his masked face toward the Imperial Rift Station. "Keep the path clear. The Emperor is expecting guests." The heart of the station hummed like a giant, restless engine. Wanda felt it before she saw it. As Strange opened a portal onto an inner walkway, hot wind rushed at them. The air smelled of ozone and something sharp, like burning metal and cold stone at once. They stepped out onto a narrow bridge overlooking the core chamber. Below them, the device spread in all directions. Kyber crystals the size of buildings floated in metal braces, glowing with inner light. Energy arced between them and the central sphere, which crackled with shifting colors. Lines of code and symbols crawled along giant displays. Technicians in black uniforms worked at consoles, faces pale. And at the center of a platform near the core stood Emperor Palpatine. He did not look surprised. "Welcome," he said, his voice echoing without a speaker. "I have been expecting you." Strange stepped forward, cloak swirling. Wanda stood beside him, hands clenched, red light already flickering around her fingers. "You're playing with forces you don't understand," Strange said. "You think you can tame the storm by building a bigger cage." Palpatine chuckled. "I have spent my life studying the dark side," he said. "Do you truly think you know more of storms than I?" He raised one hand. Blue-white lightning danced between his fingers. Wanda flinched. Strange set his jaw. "Keep him busy," Strange whispered. "I'll start the process." "You're not giving me much time to think," Wanda whispered back. "You think fine when you're angry," he said. "Just aim it." Palpatine raised both hands now. "Let us see how your magic fares against true power," he said. Lightning burst from his fingers, a wide fan of crackling energy. Wanda threw up her hands. Red barriers rose around them, catching the lightning. Sparks flew where blue met red. The floor shook. The technicians fled, running for side doors. Alarms blared. Somewhere above, a deeper boom sounded. The fleet battle had reached the station's defense zones. Strange traced glowing shapes in the air with his hands. Golden circles formed around the central sphere. Each circle hummed with its own pattern. Palpatine's eyes narrowed. "You would seal my work?" he sneered. "You have no right to meddle in my galaxy." "This isn't just your galaxy anymore," Strange said. "You made sure of that when you grabbed at the rift." Palpatine laughed, a harsh, delighted sound. "I did not open the door, sorcerer," he said. "You did. I simply stepped through." He snapped his fingers. The energy in the core surged. The central sphere flared bright. The kyber crystals screamed in a sound more felt than heard. Wanda staggered. Images flashed in her mind. Earth, Sokovia. The red glow of her own power. A boy with spider webs. A small town frozen in place. A metal body with a kind face. A green farmer's field that had never been real. Palpatine's voice slid between them. "All the worlds you touched," he whispered. "All the lives you bent. Do you see now? You and I are the same. We shape reality to our will." Wanda gritted her teeth. "No," she said. "We are not." She pushed back. Her red energy expanded, forming a dome that clamped down on the wild lightning. Strange's golden circles locked into place, one after another, around the core. The station shook again. Metal groaned. Outside, on outer platforms, Hulk landed in a shower of sparks as his drop pod crashed open. He roared and began tearing apart gun towers. Stormtroopers fired at him. Their bolts bounced off his skin. He smashed a walker's leg and used its body as a shield. Thor landed beside him, hammer glowing. "Ah, Banner!" Thor shouted. "Together again!" Hulk punched a turret so hard it spun off into space. "Hulk smash glowstick men!" he yelled. "That too!" Thor agreed, hurling his hammer at a squad of troopers. It swept them away like toys. On lower levels, Luke, Steve, Natasha, Clint, and a squad of rebel commandos fought their way toward the main control room. Blaster fire filled the halls. Luke's saber deflected bolts. Steve's shield blocked others. Nat and Clint picked targets with cold precision. At one doorway, a red lightsaber blade burst through the metal, cutting a circle. "Vader," Luke breathed. The cut piece fell inward with a crash. Darth Vader stepped through the smoke, black armor gleaming, saber humming. "The Force is strong here," he said, "and polluted." Luke stepped forward, saber up. "Leave them," he said. "This is between us." Vader tilted his head. "No," he said. "This is between all of us." He reached out. The Force slammed into Luke like a wall. Luke flew backward, hitting the floor hard. Steve rushed to stand between Vader and the others, shield up. Vader moved his hand. Steve flew to the side, shield scraping the wall. "Your tricks do not impress me," Vader said. Thor crashed through the ceiling. He landed in a shower of sparks, hammer first, between Vader and the rebels. He stood, cloak tattered, blood at the corner of his mouth, and grinned. "Ah," Thor said. "You must be the dark warrior everyone keeps talking about." Vader regarded him. "You are noisy," he said. Thor laughed. "You should hear me after a cask of ale." He hurled Stormbreaker. Vader raised his saber, angling the blade. The hammer hit the red light. The impact shook the corridor. Lightning exploded outward, racing down the metal walls. For a moment, Vader was pushed back. He recovered fast. He thrust out his free hand. The Force grabbed Thor, dragging him off his feet. Thor snarled as he slid across the floor. Luke pushed himself up, chest aching. He saw Steve getting back to his knees. He saw Natasha and Clint pulling the commandos back out of the main line of fire. He saw Vader focused on Thor. Luke closed his eyes and reached for the Force. It rushed to him, through him, around him. He felt the station, the battle, the core's wild energy, and something else, faint but steady. A small green presence, far away but watching. "Trust the light," Yoda's voice murmured. Luke leaped. He brought his saber down toward Vader's shoulder. Vader turned just in time, blocking. Blue and red locked. Sparks flew where the blades met. "Better," Vader said. "That's the idea," Luke replied through clenched teeth. Steve charged back into the fray. He flung his shield. It hit Vader's chest and bounced off, staggering him for a second. Luke pressed, striking faster. Thor swung his hammer up from the ground, sending a wave of lightning along the floor. Vader jumped, cloak flaring. The blast slammed into the ceiling instead, blasting a hole that opened onto another walkway. "Go," Steve shouted to the commandos. "Get to the control room. We'll hold him." Natasha hesitated for a heartbeat, then nodded. She grabbed a fallen trooper's code cylinder and ran with the others toward another route. Clint backed them up, firing stun arrows behind them to slow pursuing troopers. The hallway became a clash of symbols. The dark armored shape, the blue saber of a new Jedi, the star-spangled shield, the hammer of a god. Each strike echoed down the corridor more than just sound. Vader fought like a storm contained in armor. Luke was faster now, but Vader's experience still outmatched him. Steve's shield protected when Luke's guard slipped. Thor's raw power forced Vader to adjust his footing and stance. No one gained a clear upper hand, but every second they held Vader, there was a second closer to Strange and Wanda finishing their work. In the core chamber, Strange's breath came fast. The golden circles around the sphere shook. Cracks formed in some of them. A few shattered. Each time, Strange drew new shapes, replacing them with fresh shields. Wanda's red energy wrapped the kyber crystals, trying to dampen their wild light. Her hands burned. Her head rang. Palpatine walked forward slowly, lightning still spilling from his fingers. "Look at you," he said. "Drowning in power you do not understand. Afraid to use it. Afraid not to use it. You were made for this." Wanda's vision blurred. She saw him and didn't. Sometimes his face looked like her own reflection in a broken mirror. Sometimes like her brother's. Sometimes like visions, eyes sad. "No," she said again. "I was not made for you." She felt something else now. Not just the dark, not just the rift. A thread of warmth, faint but real. It came from above, from outside this chamber. She focused. She saw Luke standing with his saber raised, fighting beside Steve and Thor. She saw Leia and Han directing pilots with calm fury. She saw Tony pulling a damaged X-wing into a safer path with his repulsors. She saw Hulk holding up a collapsing bridge while commandos sprinted across it. She saw a kid on a far world watching a tiny holoscreen, eyes wide, seeing a shield raised between Imperial fire and a group of huddled people. She saw all of them, not as puppets, not as fuel, as people who had chosen to stand. Her power flared. "No," she said, stronger now. "I was made to protect them." She threw her hands forward. Red energy burst from her in a wave. It crashed into Palpatine's lightning. For a moment, red and blue were equal. Then red began to push blue back. Palpatine's eyes widened. "Impossible," he hissed. Strange shouted over the roar. "Wanda, now!" He flung his own hands outward. All the golden circles spun at once, aligning. A narrow opening formed in the center of the core, like a tunnel between the rift energy and some far distant point. Strange focused on that thread, on home, on Earth, on the Sanctum in New York, on the other Avengers who were not here, on the duty that had not left him. He felt the rift's wild energy rush toward the opening. Not all of it, just enough. He guided it, shaping it into a thin, steady beam instead of a blast. "We can't close it all," he shouted, "but we can tame it. We can make it a door, not a bomb." Wanda held Palpatine's lightning in place, pushing it into the core. The Emperor's face twisted with effort and rage. "You think you can seal what I have opened," he snarled. "I am the Senate. I am the dark side." "Good for you," Wanda said, voice shaking with effort. "I'm Wanda." She twisted her hands. The lightning snapped, turning back toward Palpatine for a split second. It struck his own hands. He cried out, stumbling. At the same time, Strange pulled. The core flared once, twice. Then its light narrowed. The wild arcs calmed. The kyber crystals dimmed. The station groaned, alarms wailing in a new tone. Outside, in the fleet, the rift's glow above the station shrank. It did not close, but its edges became smoother, less jagged. Tony saw it and let out a breath he hadn't known he was holding. "That's our cue," he said. "All ships, fall back to Formation Delta. Keep pressure on them, but get ready to jump." On the Star Destroyer bridge, Vader felt the shift. He knew, without seeing, that the Emperor's device had been changed. In the corridor, he shoved Luke, Steve, and Thor back. With a massive force, push, they crashed into a wall. Before they could stand, he stepped back through the hole in the ceiling and leaped to an upper walkway. "This is not finished," he said, voice echoing down. "When is it ever?" Steve muttered, pulling himself up. Vader stalked toward the core chamber. Inside, Palpatine straightened slowly. His robe smoked. His face had new lines. His eyes burned. "You have spoiled my toy," he said to Strange and Wanda. "But you have also done my work for me. The rift is focused now. You have made it stable. I wonder what I can do with such a neat, tidy door." Strange's jaw clenched. "You won't get to find out," he said. He looked at Wanda. She nodded. Together, they made one last gesture. Golden and red energy wrapped around the outer rings of the device, the parts that reached toward the rest of the station. Not the core, but the channels leading to the Emperor's control systems. They snapped those channels like ropes. The station shook so hard that pieces of the ceiling fell. Alarm sirens screamed. The floor bucked. The central core remained, humming at a lower, steady level. But the supports, power feeds, and control lines began to break. Palpatine reached out with the Force to hold them. For the first time in a long time, he struggled. Vader burst into the chamber, cloak whipping. "Master," he called. Palpatine snarled. "We leave," he said. "Now." He raised his hands. A storm of dark energy blew Strange and Wanda backward. They crashed against a railing. Strange's head hit metal. His vision doubled. When he focused again, Vader and Palpatine were gone. A shuttle bay far below showed a small craft pulling away. "Typical," Tony's voice crackled over Strange's comm. "Villains always leave before the place blows up." "Steven," Steve's voice came from the corridor. "We need to go." Strange staggered to his feet. Wanda pushed herself up beside him, breathing hard. "The core?" she asked. Strange looked at it. It still glowed, but softer now. Not calm, not safe, but not seconds from ripping apart the galaxy. "It's stable enough," he said. "For now, I can anchor it from our side, keep it from growing." Wanda nodded. "And if it breaks again?" "We fix it again," he said. "Or someone else does." He opened a portal. They stepped through onto a corridor where Steve, Luke, and Thor waited with the last of the commandos. "Everybody alive?" Steve asked. "More or less," Strange said. The station shook again. A voice shouted over Imperial channels, panicked. "All hands, evacuate. Structural collapse in progress." "Time to go," Han's voice said in everyone's ears. "I am not getting blown up again. Move your butts." They ran. Back on the Rebel flagship, in a quiet hangar, the air felt different. They had escaped. Barely. The rift station burned in the distance, pieces breaking off. The core remained, a small controlled glow in the dark. The Imperial fleet fell back, damaged. The Rebel fleet limped, but it was still there. In the hangar, rebels cheered as pilots climbed from cockpits. Medics moved fast. Mechanics cried and laughed at once. Steve stood with the Avengers near one wall. Luke, Leia, Han, Chewie, Mon Mothma, and Akbar stood opposite them. "You did it," Leia said. "You broke their weapon." "We broke part of it," Strange corrected. "The rift is not gone, but it's less dangerous. And now we know where it is. I can mark it, guard it." Mon Mothma's shoulders sagged with relief. "That is enough for now," she said. "More than enough." Han let out a long breath. "I hate to say it," he muttered, "but you star gods actually earned your keep." Chewie rumbled in agreement. Tony smiled tiredly. "Put that in writing," he said. "For the record." Luke looked at Steve. "What happens now?" he asked. Steve glanced at Strange. Strange stepped forward. "Now," he said, "we make a choice." He raised his hand. A small, shimmering window appeared in the air between them. Through it, they could see a dim, circular room with stone walls. Strange's sanctum. Earth. "The rift core can support one small, stable path," Strange said. "A bridge between our worlds. Not wide, not easy, but real." He looked at Tony, Nat, Clint, Bruce, Wanda, Thor, Steve. "We don't all have to take it." Tony stared at the window. He saw faint lights of a city beyond. He thought of skyscrapers, of Pepper, of what kind of mess would be waiting. "I should go back," he said quietly. "Earth still needs someone to argue with its problems." Bruce nodded. "And if we leave the Hulk here much longer, you're going to run out of stations to stand on," he said. Thor shook his head. "I will remain," he said. "There is honor in this war, and the people here have good food and good fights." Tony snorted. "You just like the lightning opportunities." Thor shrugged. "That as well." Natasha looked at Clint. He looked back. They didn't need words. They both understood their own ghosts. "I'll go," Nat said. "There are still shadows back home that need watching." "Me too," Clint said. "Besides, I promised my family I'd try not to die in a galaxy they've never heard of." Wanda stared at the portal, then at Leia and Luke. "I don't know where I belong," she said. Luke stepped closer. "You belong where you choose to stand," he said, "not where someone tells you." She smiled sadly. "That's what makes it hard." Strange put a hand on her shoulder. "I can anchor the rift from my side," he said, "but it would be safer with someone on this side too, someone who understands both magics." Wanda nodded slowly. "Then I'll stay," she said. "For a while, maybe with them." She nodded toward Luke and Leia. "Help watch your sky." Leia smiled. "We would be glad to have you," she said. Steve looked at the portal, then at the rebel soldiers around them, at the faces he had come to know. Tessa on crutches, mechanics comparing scars, Mon Mothma's tired dignity, Han's crooked grin, Luke's earnest eyes, Leia's stubborn fire. "Steve?" Tony asked. Steve rolled his shoulders. "I've spent most of my life fighting one war or another," he said. "Sometimes I think I should walk away. Let someone else carry it." He looked at Luke. "But then I see someone younger, carrying too much," he said. "And I remember who helped me, who stood next to me when I was the rookie. I want to be that person for someone else." Luke swallowed. "So," Steve said, "if you don't mind, I'd like to stay, at least until this empire is more than just shaken." Leia nodded. "We would be honored," she said. Tony sighed and smiled at him. "You always were a sucker for lost causes," he said. "Guess you're stuck being the grown-up back home," Steve replied. Tony grimaced. "Don't say that." They went around the circle one more time. Choices made, no one forced. In the end, Strange, Tony, Natasha, Clint, and Bruce stepped toward the portal. Thor, Steve, Wanda, and Hulk, with some careful planning, stayed behind for now. The portal would open again, someday, if needed. "This isn't goodbye," Luke said. "No," Strange agreed. "It's see you when the universe breaks again." "That's not comforting," Han pointed out. Strange smiled. "It's honest." They shook hands. Some hugged. Thor clapped Tony on the back hard enough to almost knock him over. Tony swore. Nat squeezed Leia's shoulder. Clint ruffled Luke's hair, ignoring Luke's protest. Wanda hugged Bruce. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" he asked. "For believing I'm more than what I can break," she said. He smiled. "You are." Tony took one last look at the hangar, at the rebel symbol on the wall, at the faces. "Save me some shawarma," he said. "We don't have shawarma," Luke reminded him. "You will," Tony replied. "Trust me." Then they stepped through. The portal closed behind them with a soft sigh. The hangar felt different, but still full. Leia exhaled. "Well," she said, "we have gods, witches, and a man out of time, and our war is still not over." Mon Mothma smiled faintly. "No," she said, "but today we moved the line." Luke looked out through the hangar shield at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Empire still held worlds in its grip. Somewhere in the deep core, a wounded device hummed, watched now from two sides instead of one. "May the Force be with them," Luke said. "And with us," Leia replied. The stars burned on. The sky above the small village was clear and quiet. Luke sat on a low stone wall and watched children play near a fountain. The world was far from the front lines. There were no star destroyers in the sky here, no trooper patrols, just farmers, traders, and laughter. A small food stall sat beside the fountain. The cook, a grey-haired woman with quick hands, worked behind a hot grill. The smell of spiced meat and baking bread filled the air. At a nearby table, Leia, Han, Chewie, Steve, Thor, and Wanda sat with simple cups and plates. A few local rebels mixed in. They all wore plain clothes today, no uniforms. For once, they looked like travelers, not leaders. Luke hopped off the wall and joined them. "So this is the famous place?" he asked. Han nodded with fake seriousness. "Best wraps in this sector," he said. "Don't tell the Empire. They'll try to tax the flavor." Chewie rumbled and pointed at Luke's empty plate. The cook dropped a fresh flatbread down, piled it with grilled meat, sliced tubers, and a sauce Tony would have approved of. She handed it over with a nod. "On the house," she said, "for what you've done." Luke felt his face heat. "We haven't won yet," he said. She shrugged. "You gave us a chance to live long enough to see if we do. That's worth a wrap." At another corner of the table, Steve bit into his own wrap, chewed slowly, and nodded. "This is good," he said. Thor finished his third wrap and wiped sauce from his beard. "This world has fine food," he declared. "We should station the fleet here." Leia raised an eyebrow. "We don't station fleets based on your stomach," she said. "Perhaps we should," Thor replied. "Happy warriors fight better." Wanda took a careful bite of hers. The flavors were bright and sharp. Different from Earth, different from Sokovia. "New," she smiled. "On the shawarma scale?" she asked. Steve thought about it. "I'm not an expert," he said, "but I'd give it an 8, maybe 9. Tony will be jealous," Luke said. "He can open a portal and come argue about it," Leia replied. "Later. Much later." They laughed softly. Around them, locals pretended not to stare, but Luke could hear whispers. "That's the princess," someone said, "and the new Jedi." "And the storm god," another voice replied in awe. "And the woman who caught a Star Destroyer piece with her mind," a child added. That one was almost true, Luke knew. Wanda had stopped a falling chunk of debris the size of a house over this very village the week before, when an old Imperial outpost had finally given up and died. Steve heard the whispers, but didn't turn. He had heard words like that before, on different streets, in another time. "I ever tell you about the little deli in Brooklyn?" he asked Leia. "Only every other day," she said dryly. He chuckled. "Food is how I measure peace," he said. "If people have time to argue about sandwiches, things aren't completely broken." Han raised his cup. "To sandwiches," he said. "To wraps," Thor corrected. "To days like this," Luke said quietly. They clinked cups. Far above them, in the thin upper sky, a small, hidden watchpoint floated. It was not much to look at, just a reinforced platform with sensors and a tiny control room. From it, Wanda could feel the gentle hum of the tame rift whenever she reached with her power. On the other side of that thin bridge, Strange watched too, standing in his sanctum with a cup of tea, cloak resting around his shoulders. Between them, across impossible distance, a quiet line of light remained. In the deep core, Emperor Palpatine sat in shadow and frowned. His device was crippled, his plans delayed. His new toys had slipped from his grasp, but his empire still spanned the stars. His agents still moved on 1,000 worlds, and now he knew, beyond doubt, that there were other universes, other powers, other wars to bend. "We shall see," he murmured, "how long their hope lasts." He lifted a hand. Tiny sparks played between his fingers. The dark side was weaker here, for now, but it was not gone. Back in the village, the sun dipped lower. Luke leaned back on his bench, full and a little drowsy. Children ran past, playing at being Jedi and Avengers, waving sticks and painted lids as shields. One child wore a rough red cloak, pretending to throw lightning, laughing. Wanda watched them and smiled. "I like this universe," she said softly. Steve nodded. "Me too." Leia took a deep breath and let it out slowly. "The war goes on tomorrow," she said. "But tonight, we sit, we eat, we remember why we fight." Han stretched his legs and put his boots up on an empty chair. The cook glared. He dropped them back down. Luke looked up at the first stars appearing in the sky. Somewhere beyond them, doorways between worlds stayed small and watched. Empires plotted, people fought, people lived. Here, for this moment, there was peace and warm food and friends at one table. Luke took another bite of his wrap and decided that, whatever came next, this was enough to keep going. "On the shawarma scale," he said with his mouth full, "I give today a 10.